meditate on it day and night, so you will be sure to obey everything written in it. Only then will you prosper, God, and succeed in all you do. Exit. Would you imagine one morning, rest yourself in this place, that you who have anticipated the fulfillment of your dreams, the accomplishments of vision, could you imagine? For all the times that you have taught, and all the times that you worked, and all the times that you have employed your energy and your effort to get somewhere, to be something, and to accomplish something. And yet it appears that you have denied the fulfillment of that. Is there anybody in here that ever woke up in the day and you realized that life has denied you certain things and certain dreams and certain aspirations and certain promises that have not been fulfilled in your own life? Is it somebody ever had to see and live with your dreams deferred? Is it anybody in this room ever feel like that I've been denied vision, I've been denied the fulfillment of all that I've done? I've invested my time, my effort, I've done what they told me I should have done, I've walked as best if I could, I've kept everything that I was told I was kept, and yet still this promise have God has not fulfilled in my life. Yet I'm still struggling, and yet I'm still fighting to get somewhere and to be something and accomplish something, and it still appears to be elusive to me. And finally one day, God wakes you up. Oh, God.
Thank you, God.
And God says, exit.
Yes.
And God says, no more denial. No more delay. God says, watch this, God says, no more discrediting, no more denouncement. And then God says to you, this is my design for you to get your dreams and to get to dominion. And now I'm ready, Joshua. Now, Joshua, are you ready? Are you ready, Joshua, to exit? I want to say this because there's times when we say we want to exit. There are times when we say we want it. We want to go there. There are times when we say we want the dream. We want the vision. We want the manifestation. There are times when we say that we want our plans to come forth. There's times when we say we want to succeed in an area, but yet we don't make the necessary steps, and yet we're not going through the necessary processes in order to bring manifestation to what you talk about in terms of in your mind, or either what you speak in your mouth. And so therefore your dreams, your aspirations, and the things that you want to do and the places you want to go appears as if it is deferred, it is denied, and it is delayed. And finally you hear God say to you, no more denials, no more delays. It is Joshua who sits on the eve of a new day and a new dawn and a new experience. Calendar years is one thing, and there's people who oftentimes that when we get ready to move towards the things of God, that we're always trying to measure it in time. You measure how long you've been doing. You measure how much you've been doing. You measure it in terms of time. You measure it in terms of man measurements. But God never measures anything in terms of time, and he does not measure things in terms of measurement, because God knows that the thing that he's developing on the inside of you cannot be measured by time, and it cannot be maturated by time, and it cannot be measured by measurements of men. And so God has to do something else and measure on a different thing, and God measures our fate.
Yeah.
That is Joshua, who have lived 40 years in the wilderness. Not because he wanted to be 40 years in the wilderness, but he's lived 40 years in the wilderness with the people who have denied him access to the promises of God, in the place of God, in the privilege of God, in the plenty that God had for them. You remember that it is at Kadesh Barnea that when God says, Kadesh Barnea, when God says to Moses, get me 12 men from the tribe of Jacob and send those 12 men to go in and spy out the land that I promised to give to Abraham. Give give me 12 men that will go and give me a report concerning the land. And Joshua and Moses obeys God, and he sends 12 men. And among those 12 men is a man by the name of Joshua. They go and spy out the land. They come back, 10 come back, and they come back with the report of the land. The land is a goodly land. The land is plentiful. The land is flowing with milk and honey. The land got grapes and pomegranates that it takes 2 men to carry one cluster of grapes. He comes back and saying that the land is great, but they are in the land as giants. And the fact that they pay more attention in terms of the giant other than the promise of God. And they come back and they say to Moses, 10 of them says to Moses, the land is great, but we are not greater than those that are in the land. And so Moses, we have to wait.
Yes, sir.
Ooh, God.
Yes, sir.
We have to wait, Moses, until giants die. We have to wait, Moses, until the people are receptive of it. We got to wait, Moses. We're on delay because there are giants. The son of Anax is there. You know, Goliath people are there. They are in the land, and we can't take it because the land is well fortified. And therefore, they come back with a report back to Moses and says to Moses, we're not ready. Woo! Oh, God. They said, we're not ready, Moses. We're not ready to fight giants. We're not ready, Moses. We're not ready to take the land. We're not ready, Lord, Moses. We're not ready for their army. We're not ready, Moses. We're not ready for this people. They are greater than us. And here it is that when they say that to Moses, what they say is that they believe that it is based upon them. And it is based upon their strength. It is based upon their ability. It is based upon their ability to deal with what's in the land and those in the land, and not God who sends them to spy out the land. Because when he says to Moses, you got to hear, that's why you got to hear the instructions of God. That's why you got to hear everything God says and not some of the stuff God says. Every word that God drops off his mouth, out of his mouth is important, and not one word ought to be taken for granted, because rest in that one word is the ability to cross you over, to cross you into, to give you comprehension of in terms of what God has planned to do for you. You cannot let one jot or tittle of the word of God fell from you and not follow it, because all in the jot, the tittle, and every word God intends to perform. God says before one jot, before one tittle of my word fell, heaven and earth will pass away. God is faithful to every jot and to every tittle and every spoken word of his. And if he's faithful to that, then it behooves you and I to follow and to be faithful to it too. He says to him, Moses, I'm going to give them the land. I just want them to go check it out. I want them to go window shopping. I want them to go looking at it. I want them to go and view it. I'm going to give them the land. I'm going to wait with the opposite word in here. Give the opposite word in here. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to fight for it. The opposite word is here. I'm going to give it to them, Moses. I'm going to give it to them. The opposite word is I'm going to go in and I'm going to get what I have already, the titles and deeds to, and I'm going to evict him, and I'm going to bring you in. The opposite word and give, meaning that God is going to walk in and he's going to tell giants, sit down, get out of the way. The opposite word is give. Moses, I'm going to show up in those that got temporary deeds and temporary. I'm going to tell them sign it over, give it over, because I brought in somebody to give, meaning I am the eternal landlord of everything I created, and whoever I want to evict got to go. He said, Moses, tell them I'm about to give them the land. They need to understand, Moses, that I'm going to give them the land. They don't have to work for the land. Matter of fact, Moses, they don't have to fight for the land. All I want them to do is show up and believe that I'm giving them the land.
Yes, Lord. Thank you, God.
Hey.
Hey. Thank you, God.
They come back talking about giants when God was talking about giving.
Yes, sir.
How many times have we talked about giants when God is talking about giving?
Yes,
and you got to always remember, if God said he's going to give you something, it doesn't matter whether giants are in there, whether gnats are in there, whether frogs are in there, whether it doesn't matter what's in the land and who in the land. If God's going to give it, then the land is gave. You got to know something about the God that you serve and the God that you submit to, that he's already been where you're going. He's already done what he said he's going to do. And he's allowed you to walk it out in the process of time that he may manifest and macerate your faith. And so God, who's already done it and already gave it, already repossessed it, had already said, I'm ready to give it to you, but are you ready to receive it? Can I say something to you that you got some things, you missed some things in 21 that God would have gave you, but you didn't give God no faith. You gave God denials. God said, I'll take you there in a pandemic. God said, I'll bless you and increase you in the midst of a famine. God said, I'll heal you in the midst of sickness. God said, I'll protect you when there's disease all around you. But what I need for you to do is give me some faith. Give me some faith that ain't scared. Give me some faith that I believe that I keep you and I protect you and watch you. And yeah, give me a faith that believes that I'm your healer, I'm your protector, I'm your provider. Give me a faith that I believe that no matter what the CDC said, the ADCC, no matter what the president Potate and everybody, no matter what the governor and the mayor say, that believe me that if you walk where I said you walk, if you go where I say go, I keep you as if there's nothing around you. Hey! He said, I told him I'm going to give him the land.
Yes, sir.
And they come back and gave me this place. They came back and talked about as giants are bigger than gods. I read a little book, and the book says, God and giants. And the premise of the book is to remind people that God is the only giant. God is the only giant. I don't care how tall, I don't care how, I don't care. God is the only giant. Nothing get bigger than God. I'm glad. Watch this. Watch this out there. They taught me in elementary school, and I thank God in that time when I was going to school, they would let you sing songs and say things about God. And they would say things like, he's too wide, you can't go around her. He's too tall, you can't go over him. He's too low, you can't go over him. You must come through him. And if you're going to come through God, you got to come through God with faith. Can I help you in this room with some elementary teaching? I'm glad they taught me. God is too big that you can't go around him. Too tall that you can't go over him. And too low that you can't go over him. And I thank God for my Sunday school teacher who taught me you got to have faith if you're going to go through him. You got to have faith if you're going to trust him. Can I help you in this room that Joshua wakes up and finally the plague of disappointment is over. He wakes up and finally the heartbreak and the deferred and the delayed dreams are no longer denied. He wakes up and finally God is about to release him from those who don't want God, who don't want his promise, who don't want his power. He's about to release him from the people who won't believe God, for the people who won't walk in God, for the people who will not trust God. Finally God says, you're no longer responsible for them. You're no longer obligated to them. You no longer have to deal with them. Joshua, exit. Get up. Already have today's sermon. Get up. Yeah. I'm going to preach about sinners and saints. Get up. God, you know it's 4 o'clock in the morning. You're going to want me in that little building, God, about 8 o'clock. And I need some rest if I'm going to preach today. Get up. God, I don't really have to be there until 10. You know, Pastor got it in the early morning. I tell you, he said, get up. Boy, you don't understand. I'm about to shift something in your life. I'm about to shift something in this walk. I'm about to shift something in your existence. Get up. Derek Lee, get up. Exit. I said, I already preached exit. I know I made a good job. I know how to get it all out. I already talked about that. He said, get up, boy. There's another exit. There's another story. There's something else I need to say to you about exit. He said, it's time to exit. Exit where? He said, the first thing I want you to do is recognize that there's no more denials. And there's no more delays. I said, God, what is this about these denials and delays? He says, listen here. Only reason why you and some more people have not come into the place where I wanted them to be. Hallelujah. And only reason why You have had dreams deferred. The only reason why the vision have not flourished, the only reason why, oh God, that you have not been able to bring the people to where I want them to be and where I've shown you and where I is because I told people, I tell you this morning, I said again, that always start with me. The good place for an honest man or woman that you wouldn't first look in terms of why you are where you are and what you're going through because of other people, because there's always a primary responsibility that whenever they told me this right here, when you're pointing one finger this way, you're pointing it right here. And so when you're blaming other folk, there's others point back to you and you say, but you to blame as well. And so he says the first reason why that there's no more denial, you would not no longer deny me all of you.
Amen. Amen.
And I preach in this room.
Yes, sir.
See, now if Joshua's in this room and you have faith to believe God for the promise, there's Joshua's in this room. You have faith to go into the new land. There's Joshua's in this room. You ain't scared of giants. You just scared of surrendering everything that God is asking you for. You ain't scared of giants, but you're scared of selling all and following him. You ain't scared of giants, but you're scared of depending on other people to take care of you, including God. You ain't scared of giants, but you're scared to trust God in an unseen and an unknown place. You ain't scared of giants, but you're scared of poverty. You ain't scared of giants, but you're scared of being broke. You ain't scared of giants, but you're scared of losing all the little material stuff that you've gained that defines you in terms of a person, but it doesn't define your faith. Get up there, Leah. There's no more of you denying me. All of you, and I want you to surrender all, sell all, release all, give all, and I want you to come and follow me. No more denying me, all of you. No more denying me every personal step you take. No more denying me your professional walk. No more denying me in terms of who you are, where you are, and what I want you to be. No more. I said to God, okay, that's enough for me. Well, are you folk? Some of the reasons why I don't do what I need to do because I ain't certain about whether or not I trust them. He said, it ain't never about them.
My God. My God. My God.
Listen, he said, it ain't never about them. He said, need I remind you? I had you in the Lubis, and it was never about them. You'd have no place, you'd have nothing. All you could do is be at the mercy of Lubis, and all you had to buy $5 tickets to feed folk, so folk can be in church. And you had to, no, you lost yourself. He said, it ain't never been about them. And you remember the manager at Lubis would give you those tickets and say, Pastor, don't worry about it. Here go 100 and some tickets here. Use them till you get ready and you get through. And then I took care. He said, you remember that? He says, you remember that manager left and you was talking about, I ain't gonna do that. And you were way on Shepherd at another location and you was talking to another manager about that manager, and that manager gave you some tickets to be able to do what you need to do on a whole other side of town. You went, wait. Because the other manager talked to the other manager about the fact that you was the preacher that was having church at Lubis on every Sunday morning and feeding from Lubis tickets. And you occupied their room every Sunday morning and there was no availability. So when other people called over, said we already have a pre-scheduled event there every Sunday morning, because as a pastor that brings his people. And when you start talking about to the other manager over there and they said, oh, you the one that let me give you. It ain't never been about them. He said, you don't remember when you was on Halifax and y'all had rent, and then I hooked you up with a job, and the doctor that you were hooked up to decided that he wanted to do some business out of that place, and he paid for the rent there, and you no longer had to pay rent in that place because he paid the rent. He said, it ain't never been about you. You remember when you were down there on True Street and you had more building and you had folk, you had all of that in some kind of way. You sitting in $500,000 multi-million-dollar business, sitting down there paying $1,300 a month, and you had all the access and all that, and you got ready to buy it, and you thought I wanted you to buy it because I didn't want you to buy it because you would have got stopped. You would have stopped and got stuck because I was ready to develop your faith beyond the building and beyond the location, because I'm after people. I ain't after buildings. I ain't after locations. I ain't after landmarks. I'm after the hearts of men and women. He said, you remember that. He said, you remember that. But you remember in that same building, again, I paid the rent. Again, I covered you. He said, all right. You remember you was trying to go to Midtown, and when you was trying to go to Midtown, they denied you, said they didn't want a church there. They didn't want people there that was church. They wanted somebody that had the same kind of community that enhanced the community with their presence. You said, you remember we was there, and you went there, and I allowed you to remodel the place, get in there, and finally the other realtor let you in when the other realtor denied you, and there you said it in prime property, right off the freeway, in between 59 and 16, right there, little old church, not a lot of folk, but little old church, prime property, prime location, prime visibility, and people that still today are calling out, Pastor, y'all was over there, y'all was over there, y'all was over there. Pastor, y'all must have somebody. We didn't have no money. We had a God that has provision and resources. Pastor, you went in paying and able to pay because I bless you when you left out of the Hyatt hotel. You're blessed enough to be able to come in for a season. But he said, I needed to teach you something in terms of that too, because the season came that when the rent elevated, but there was no elevation in tithes and offering. The rent elevated, but the people weren't able to give in that season, and they weren't able to meet their obligation. And I told you, Pastor, to go and talk to the leader. I told you, go back to the person that I sent you to. I said, Doc, I don't want to go talk to the doctor because she's been good to us. I don't want to go tell the lady I don't have her money. He said, go to her. I said, I ain't going talking to her. I ain't going to tell her. I ain't going. He says, talk to her. And watch this right here. I drove all the way home. Pastor left her in the office. She was there in the office. By the time I got home, me and God agonizing in my bedroom, and God saying, call. I said, I ain't calling the lady. Then I told God it's too late to call her. She's an elderly lady. I ain't about to call her. God, I can't explain to her why I don't have the rent. He said, ain't never been about them. He said, but when you wouldn't call her because it was too late, out of respect, she called you at 9 o'clock at night and called you and said, Pastor. And while she was talking to me, Pastor, while he was talking to me, talking about Pastor, I was rubbing it on. We had the money, the budget ain't there, tithes and offering ain't there. I don't personally, I can't get it. I can't cover it no more. I didn't cover it enough. I'm about to make my children go into poverty and in starvation, trying to cover the ticket that God wrote. And God says, you little lie, Derek Lee. I never asked you to pay for nothing that I sent and led you to. Watch this right here. Well, because I was too scared to follow him and trust him. Watch what he says to me. He says this right here. The doctor, while I'm talking and I'm complaining and saying why I can't do a thing, the doctor says, Pastor, and I kept on talking. And she said, Pastor, and I kept on talking. And she said, Pastor, and I kept on talking. And then finally, this little nice, sweet lady hollered at me, Pastor. And I was so shocked that she hollered at me. The doctor said, Pastor, you want to be there? Be there. I said, wait a minute, we don't have the money. Be there. I don't know when we're going to have the money. Be there. I don't know how we're going to pay you, Doc. Be there. And then she said this to mess me up. She says, be there. And then she tells me, he said, Pastor, in the morning, I want you to get up and I want you to come to my office. I was like tripping out like, what? Well, I'm already ashamed that I don't have your money. Now you're going to make me face you.